Been diving into a lot of fatherhood stories recently, and one of them came up into this thought of when are we truly free? And this author that I was working with and having conversation with, and he shared this quote that I couldn't find the author to validate with, but the quote still hits home, that a man truly is only free when he lives like his father is dead. Now, his father does not need to be dead. He could be living and still have a relationship with him. But the idea that you make choices every day, you live your life free of the burden of any thoughts tied to what would my dad think? A lot of what I've learned, and just in the last few weeks even, is this idea of understanding of how much of our own dad's story is tied to our dad's story. And the same person that gave me this context also gave me this brilliant question of, if my son was 37, what would I want him to be thinking about? And I spent some time thinking on it, and it hit me like, I want him to have a deep thought process of self. I don't want him to spend any time thinking about me. And the person I was talking with was like, well, why do you spend any time thinking about it when you're 37? And I'm like, touche. Good point. The reason why I bring up this story is because as I've been saying, diving into a lot of fatherhood stories. And what we don't truly realize is when we maybe live in the shadows of our dad, when we live in the shadows of emptiness of what maybe we never got, we essentially tie a limiting factor to who we can become. Because if every thought has to be filtered through, what would my dad do? Or what would my dad approve of? Or what is my dad's intention? Then we're never truly living free. And as a man, we live in a free country here in America. But yet, in many ways, we are still slaves to the thought of our dad. We are still slaves to this idea of who we could become. We still live in the shadows of those thoughts. And the idea that comes from this is limited to so many different areas. Limited to thoughts of money, wealth, opportunity, where you live, how you live, what kind of house do you have, what kind of car do you drive? Do you drive a car that looks like a POS, not because you want to drive a POS, but because that's what you're comfortable with, driving into your dad's driveway? All of these thoughts, as you can see, can easily, very tricking as well, tie back to our dad. And I've also been contemplating how much of our inability to make money in life. I've had the same question. How much of my inability to make wealth and generate a high-paying salary has been tied to what would my dad do? Or how many dreams did I give up on because they didn't pass through that filter? How many dreams did I not pursue because they didn't fit in the box that my dad said I should grow up into? Again, all of these things are big, giant rabbit holes, but a lot of our men's stories tie back to a fatherhood story. And it doesn't matter. I've talked about this before. It doesn't matter whether you had an ordinary, extraordinary, or a dumpster fire for a dad. There's almost always a story tied to it. Because our identity of self is tied to, in many ways, is to our dad. And if we feel still connected to some version of that, then we're not truly living. So I share all of this to encourage you. Dive into your dad's story. Take the advice that I was given by the man that gave me the same conversation and write a letter to your dad that you never send. Let a lot of those things out. Good, bad, the ugly. I talked about that before, loving the good, the bad, and the ugly. Realizing how much of our story is tied to all these things, but also realizing how important it is to pursue the ideas of what comes next, to pursue our best life. Because if we think about it, like, there's 1,000 things that I might be doing differently right now if my dad wasn't here anymore. And a lot of my thought choices are tied to because my dad is still here. Am I truly a free man? Even though I consider myself to be a free man and living a free lifestyle. But if it's still in the shadows of limiting of what someone else did or didn't do in their life, that's not really free. So rambled on long enough, given you enough food for thought here. That is all I have for you today. If you've noticed, been a little bit behind in the episodes lately, I have essentially been recovering from a chest cold, sinus infection, and a bunch of other things that prevented the podcast from getting published. But we're going to be catching up here. I will be publishing a bunch of episodes, probably in a batch here coming up. So hang tight, hang on. Just keep looking for the new episodes. We'll be dropping out kind of randomly like this one is. But I will be catching back up, and we will be right on target, and I will not miss a beat. But we just have to kind of catch back up from the blunder of health that I had to walk through. So that is all I have for you today, and I will be back again either tomorrow or sometime in the future here.